Before the paint touches the paper, I take a pencil and start sketching. The main character is a girl in a sports outfit, energetic, smiling, with lively eyes and blush on her cheeks. Her pose is dynamic. She seems ready to play, demonstrating her shape. Next to her is a racket leaning against a chair, and behind her is a brick wall, a piece of wood, and a blue sky with birds. The sketch is easy to build. First the oval of the head, then the vertical axis. I outline the shoulders, arms, skirt, slightly tilting the lines to give it a natural look. I emphasize the contours of the clothes with more confident strokes, especially the geometric pattern on the vest. HB2 pencil, medium softness, gives a fairly dark line but is easily erased. A sheet of thick A3 paper, optimal for sketches, allows you to work out details. Eraser, to correct errors and clarify lines. At the first stage, we set the main guidelines on the sheet. We need to determine the position of the figure in space and set the proportions. On the sheet, draw a vertical line with light strokes. This will be the axis of symmetry of the body. Then, determine the level of the shoulders and pelvis by drawing 2 horizontal lines. These lines will help us balance the pose and avoid distortions. Now sketch out the basic shapes of the body in the form of geometric shapes. Head, a small oval at the top of the axis. Chest, a larger circle under the head. Pelvis, an ellipse or trapezoid under the chest. It is important to monitor the proportions at this stage. For example, the upper body is usually equal to the length of the legs. You can also use light lines to mark the position of the limbs. Schematically draw the arms and legs in the form of guidelines. Now we turn the skeleton into a human figure. Smooth out the lines, adding natural contours of the body. At this stage, you can already set the shape of the shoulders and their slope. Determine the volume of clothing. For example, if the character wears a jacket, the sleeves will be wider. Start drawing the hairstyle. Lightly indicate the direction of the hair. This is a transitional stage. The silhouette becomes recognizable, but we do not work out the details yet. Now we add the facial features. The proportions of the face can be marked out using auxiliary lines. Horizontal line at eye level, nose line usually below the middle of the face, mouth line at a distance of about 1/3 from the nose to the chin. We draw the eyes, nose, mouth, and watch the facial expression. If the character is smiling, it is important to convey the emotion through the curve of the eyebrows and the corners of the lips. The clothes become more detailed. We add folds, clarify the silhouette of the sleeves, collar, and belt. We outline accessories such as buttons, pockets, and seams. Now the final touch, we emphasize the lines and add the background. We clarify the hairstyle, draw individual strands. We do shading on the clothes, indicating shadows and volume. We add background objects so that the character does not look hanging in the air. For example, a chair, a racket, wall textures. At this stage, it is important to step away from the drawing. Look at it from the side to see the mistakes and correct them with an eraser. Creating a sketch is a step-by-step process. We start with rough geometric shapes, then move on to detailing, giving the drawing a natural look. The main thing is to observe the proportions. Not be afraid to correct mistakes and remember that the sketch is the basis of the future work. Now it's time for the first paint. I take liquid blue acrylic paint and a thin brush. I dip it in water, achieving fluidity, and begin to outline the main lines of the sketch. This is not just a mechanical repetition of a pencil drawing, I am already laying down the mood. Around the eyes and lips I draw lines a little stronger to express emotions, and in the area of clothing I draw neat edges. The contours should be clear, but not hard. I let the paint spread a little, creating the effect of light shadow work. In some places, I add a little more water to make the lines look airier. Now the main magic of color begins. It is important to be methodical here. Move from top to bottom and paint over elements of the same color together to minimize cleaning of the brush. I start with the face. I take yellow paint and mix it with a drop of water to get a more transparent tone. With a medium brush, I carefully apply the color, avoiding filling the eyes, lips, and blush. Once the first layer is dry, I add subtle shades of orange to create depth. The hair is a mix of orange and brown. I use a fan brush to paint individual strands, adding shadows with a thin brush to create texture. I finish with a small bow. I want it to stand out, so I use a contrasting red. The transition to the clothes requires clarity. I start with the pink vest, using a medium brush. I paint the white lines of the pattern, leaving them unpainted. I add shadows using a deeper shade of pink. Then I paint the jacket with green, working first with large brush strokes, and then detailing the folds and shadows. The skirt is also green, but I change the shade slightly, adding more water, so that it stands out from the jacket. I highlight the bottom of the hem with dark green. For the sky, I use blue paint and a fan brush. I spread the color with light movements, leaving light spots in some places, clouds. I draw the upper sections a little darker, creating depth. The brick wall requires patience. I use a medium brush, applying warm shades of ochre and red, and then with a thin brush, I add seams between the bricks. I draw the tree last. I take dark green paint and a fan brush, creating a soft texture of foliage. I draw the trunk and branches with a thin brush, adding brown shades. All that remains is to add the final touches. In the sky, I draw a pair of blackbirds with light movements of a thin brush, as if their silhouettes were cut out in the air. The racket is one of the key elements that requires precision. I emphasize its contours with yellow, and then carefully draw the grid with black paint. I add highlights and details, small white dots on the eyes, neat shadows on the skirt and sleeves, dark lines in the hair. All this makes the picture come alive. Now all that remains is to let the paint dry completely, and the picture is ready. The painting is a bright, emotional portrait of a girl in sportswear against the backdrop of the sky, a tree, and a brick wall. The work has a lively, expressive style with rich colors, bold lines, and an energetic delivery. However, there are both strengths and areas for improvement. Composition and placement of elements. The main character is placed in the center, which immediately attracts the viewer's attention. The dynamics of the pose add life to the image. The character seems to open her jacket, revealing her shape. The inclusion of additional elements, racket, chair, brick wall, tree, creates context and makes the scene more complete. What could be improved? The left corner seems overloaded with dense green foliage. It would be possible to make the foliage less dense or move it higher to better balance the space. The brick wall on the right is slightly cut off, which creates a feeling of incompleteness. You want to see its continuation. Clear, confident contours emphasize the style of the work, making it expressive. Using blue outlines instead of the traditional black makes the drawing unique. What could be improved? The character's face is slightly asymmetrical. The left eye seems larger than the right, which makes the look slightly unnatural. The lines of the hands seem a little less confident than the lines of the clothes. Perhaps it was worth adding more details, for example, slight folds in the skin. The lines of the mouth are too thin compared to the rest of the features, which makes it less expressive. Bright, saturated colors create a positive and energetic mood. The contrast between the pink vest and the green jacket makes the character stand out. The yellow tones of the skin create the effect of illumination, adding warmth to the image. What could be improved? The background, sky, is too uniformly blue. A gradient from darker to lighter would add depth. The transitions between colors could be smoother. For example, the hair looks sharp due to the contrast between the orange and black lines. Intermediate shades could be added. The racket is too light compared to the other elements. It gets lost in the background. A darker outline would help it stand out. The hair texture is interesting due to the use of different shades. The clothes look detailed due to the pattern on the vest. The tree in the corner gives a sense of natural space, creating a balance between the architecture, brick wall, and nature. What could be improved? The foliage of the tree is too uniform. It lacks depth. It could have added a few darker spots for shadow. The grass at the bottom seems crumpled and not as detailed as other parts of the background. The grid on the racket is slightly skewed. The accuracy of the lines would improve the realism. The character radiates positivity and confidence, which is conveyed through a smile and bright colors. The dynamic pose and gestures add life to the drawing. What could be improved? The eyes are too symmetrical in placement, but slightly different in shape, which makes the look a little strange. More shadows could have been added on the face and clothes to give volume. The detailing of the hands could be higher. The fingers look too simple. The painting has a bright personality, bold color solutions, and an expressive composition. It feels the author's character, a combination of emotionality, energy, and picturesqueness. At the same time, the balance of the composition, the work with gradients, and the elaboration of details could be improved. If minor inaccuracies in anatomy, color transitions, and contour lines are corrected, the work will become even more integral and professional. Overall verdict: a strong, lively work with powerful expression that needs some technical improvements. The painting has a bright personality, bold color schemes, and an expressive composition. It feels like the author's character, a combination of emotion, energy, and picturesqueness. At the same time, the balance of the composition, the work with gradients, and the elaboration of details could be improved. If minor inaccuracies in anatomy, color transitions, and contour lines are corrected, the work will become even more integral and professional. Overall verdict: a strong, lively work with powerful expression.